Hello and welcome to Love Samantha Lee, the More Than Just Pretty podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Lee, and here we explore love, life, spirituality, and relationships through the lens of real beauty, the kind that begins the moment you decide to be unapologetically yourself. Join us as we dive into heartfelt discussions that challenge, inspire, and connect us. Are you ready to embrace your true self? Let's begin. What's up, family? It's your girl, Samantha Lee. And y'all, tonight, I'm gonna be honest with you. This particular episode has taken me like 3 or 4 tries, and that's not a typical situation. So, although I know the enemy is at work, and I know I have a lot of competing thoughts in my mind, I don't. When I thought about doing this podcast, I really wanted this to be something where I'm just unapologetically, transparently myself. I'm thinking of it as like my diary to people I don't know. And so this week's episode is a revelation that I had in my own diary in real life. And I want to share with you guys what that was. And of course, I know some people that might be joining me now may like, Sam, why is everything spiritual? And you'll understand during the course of this episode why. But I've grown in my journey with God and my life, understanding life through the context of God has helped me to conceptualize the things that have occurred, conceptualize the good, the bad, and the different, and have hope for a greater future. I actually had somebody call me and ask me, if you just didn't believe this whole God thing, wouldn't you live your life differently? You believe in this imaginary person in the sky that allows all these things to happen on the earth. And, if you read the Bible, you understand that the earth is not what God intended for it to become. This is where the enemy resides. This is his playground. And God is at work, but the enemy is at work too. And we see a lot of that, undeniably, as you watch the news and politics and all gossip and shade room, everything. You can see the enemy at work. Undeniably, there's an undeniable evil force at work in this world. And so for me, if there's an undeniable evil, there's got to be an undeniable good. Because what goes up must come down, right? Left and right, good and bad, undeniable evil, undeniable good. And so I think that with all that being said, somebody asked me if I lived my life, if I thought about this journey that I'm walking now, would I live my life differently? And I said I wouldn't. Why would I live it any other way? Like in the past, you guys, when I first started this walk, like I felt like, oh man, I'm too young to be not doing this and not doing that. I want to enjoy my life. I want to live my life. And I realized like later on, like I wasn't really enjoying my life. I was just doing what everybody else was doing. Yes, it was quote unquote fun, but at some point it's not fun anymore. At some point you get out of, went to University of Georgia, you get out of partying, you get out of school, you get out of these phases that you go through, or you wake up the next morning and you're like, what happened? What did I do? And it's not really worth it. It never was really worth it. Anything that I hyped up being fun, I don't care what type of event it was it fun? Yes. Was it ever what I had fantasized it to be? No. No date was like that. No situation was like that. It was never what I made it to be. And I found that with my relationship with God, I realized that the enemy's done a really good job of making what seems like freedom look like freedom. But I feel like it's bondage. When I lived my life a certain way, I don't feel like I was free. I feel more free now than I did then, if I'm being real with you. Because back then, freedom was going to college, having no curfew. You could go to downtown and do whatever. In downtown Athens, for those who go to UGA, y'all know there's downtown UGA. And that's where we all hung out weekends, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we there. Okay. And just not having no rules and not having anybody that's like making sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're in charge of your own life at that point. But so you're thinking that's freedom. But I experienced more sadness, more brokenness, more of everything during that time of my life. And so later on in my life, as I've kind of, naturally God has like removed certain desires from me. That doesn't mean I don't like having fun. That doesn't mean I'm holier than thou. Please do not take it like that. But as I've grown in my faith and as I've grown as a human being, what used to be like what I wanted to do every weekend ain't what I want to do every weekend. Now what's fun for me every weekend, y'all, if we being real, curling up with a glass of wine and watching Love is Blind, or I'll be here at night watching my little sports podcast or something, like I unwind different ways. I recharge in different ways. And what was freedom at one point in my life is now, it looks like when I go to the clubs now, I'm like, oh my God, let me get up out of here. I do not belong here. This is not it. You have to be in a certain mind frame to be in that type of environment, y'all. I just can't be there like I used to. Okay. And that's probably maturity, of course, but there's spiritual growth that's gone there. But going back to the question I was asked, would I still want to live my life this way? And I say yes, because y'all, I feel like I'm living with integrity. I'm loving people well. I'm choosing the higher road. I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of, when I take it to God, I truly experience peace. There's a sense of fearlessness that I have that I wouldn't have if I didn't have this relationship with God. There's a sense of focus. There's a sense of purpose. My life has meaning. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it. Wouldn't trade any of this for anything. Because what used to be fun doesn't look like fun. We can see on the media that what people think, oh, we always want to go to this type of party. Okay, we see what was going on in them parties. Wasn't necessarily where we all wanted to be. Okay. So all I'm saying is that sometimes we fantasize and we think that certain things are the best road or the higher road or the preferred road, or, oh, I wish I could just be in that room or be with that person or be in this situation. And we don't even realize what God is blocking us from. Y'all, I look back on my life and I think about times when I was younger, y'all, social media had just come out. Then we talk about college, it's about 10 years ago. Hold on. Yeah, a little over 10 years ago now. Social media was really getting hot in the beginning of my college days. And I remember just wanting, that was when everybody started getting hot on social media. Now we knew of the IG girls that all the guys wanted and things like that. And I was like, oh man, I want to be that. I want to be that. But God wouldn't let it happen. Now I got a little bit of notoriety here in Atlanta or whatever, but as far as like my pictures going viral, quote unquote viral here, but it wasn't bad pictures, y'all. It was my face, but nonetheless, it was like, I thank God that what I have today, I didn't have then because I couldn't handle it. It was all for the wrong motivations. And I see now that, like, okay, that desire was for a reason, but it wasn't for the reason that I was going to steward at that time for. I hope that made sense. At that time, I wanted that for me. At this point in my life, I want to figure out what my purpose is. I'm trying to do what God has called me to do on this planet using what he's given me. Back then, I wasn't thinking about purpose and what God wanted me to do. I was just thinking about what would scratch my ego. Right? And so now, like, as I get into what I really want to talk about today, is that I have struggled my whole life, y'all. I've struggled with being so committed to my plan. Like, I am a planner. You tell me you're going to show up on Saturday at 12. I'm holding you to showing up between 12 and 1 on Saturday. And if you don't show up, if you don't call me, if you don't hit me up, I take that personal. I'm just one of them people. Like I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is, but we're not gonna get into that today. But I'm inflexible. And I like to plan things out. And when things don't happen according to plan, especially, catch me 10 years ago, it throws me all the way off. It would throw me all the way off. My whole day is thrown off. I remember there was times when I was growing up and my dad was supposed to take me to horseback riding camp. And let's say it didn't happen, I would just be depressed the whole day because I had my mindset, I'm going to horseback riding. And I know that's like a small example, but y'all, that is like a pivotal moment in my life. I remember how devastated I was. I remember like my mom saying, no, I couldn't go. My dad had set up the horseback riding lesson. My dad were at odds most of my childhood. And my dad had set up this lesson. I really was enjoying horseback riding. He would take me, but he wasn't in town and he couldn't take me. And my mom was supposed to take me. And my mom, because of her own, things that she had going on, said she wasn't going to take me. And I was devastated, y'all. I was devastated. Devastated wasn't even the word. I threw myself down and just was like, I had my heart set on something. And when it didn't happen, I just didn't know what to do. I find myself now at my age, and I know I'm not like old, but I'm not young either. And I've accepted that. I actually enjoy that. I like that about myself. But I look back on how it was then, and I've gotten better now. I'm more, I can get to a place where I surrender the plan. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, last week I was struggling because there was plans that I was making or I had made or feelings I had, or there was things that a course I had set out in my mind or things that I felt like God had told me. And there were things that were occurring in my life that were contradicting what I thought God had told me. And I'm like, God, you said this was going to happen then, or this was going to happen, or this was this, or this was that. And I was like dealing with the reality that that wasn't happening the way that I thought it was going to happen when it was going to happen. And I was conflicted because I'm like, God, I thought that was you. And I'm battling spiritual warfare. Okay. And I got a puppy. So this puppy is not as easy as I thought it was. Let's start there. The first thing that really showed me that this was not going according to Sam's plan was the puppy. Okay, puppy waking up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay, that was not a part of the plan. I did not know I had decided to take on another baby. Did not know that. I know puppy is a baby, but I thought it was a baby that came sleeping through the night. I forgot that they do not sleep through the night yet. It's okay. I've gotten used to that now. But I when I was having those conversations in the early hours of the morning, I was just saying to God, like, okay, God, what are you doing? Like, I thought you said this. I thought you said that. Like, now this is happening. Like, does that mean that's not going to happen? Well, okay. Well, this opportunity came. So does that mean this is it? So do I attach to this because this is everything that I thought I wanted and blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm over here. I'm conflicted. I'm like having talks with myself on the way to work and to the gym. And I'm like, okay, God, well, if that's what, da, 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 da. And there was one night where I just said, okay, guys, you know what? If it isn't it, I just surrender it. I surrender it. And as much as I thought it was going to be this, I'm okay if it's not that. Just make me want this. Make me want that. Make me like, I was like, God, just change the desires of my heart so that whatever it is that you decide you want for me, I want it like that too. And y'all, I walk into church on Sunday, pastor and starts speaking, and the sermon is based upon a proverb. I think it's Proverbs 19:21. And I'm going to read it out to you guys because I don't have a whole lot of time today. And I'm not going to keep you guys long, like I normally do. But this thing right here hit me like a ton of bricks. It says, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. Proverbs 19:21. I found out, or I learned in that particular sermon, that there was a part of me that thought that my plans were greater or worked better or looked better or felt better than the plans that God had for me. And I have to remember, as I've built it up in this entire podcast dialogue, that there was a time that what I wanted to do was not what was best for me. Like, it felt good in the moment to be able to go out every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. But I remember at some point, there was so much brokenness and listlessness and depression and different things that I was battling at that time that I was trying to deal with in an earthly way that led me back to God, that led me back to a therapist, that had me having to process that for years because of the choices I made in my earlier 20s. So again, I say this with all due respect. Yes, I had freedom. And yes, it seemed good and it looked good and it felt good in the moment, but it was something that I had to heal from. It was something that I had to spend time in front of a therapist processing and reprocessing and discovering and rediscovering and changing up and all these different things that I had to do. Why? Because at some point in my life, I thought that I wanted to eat ice cream every day. And that ice cream is metaphorical for I just want to do what felt good. I just wanted to eat what felt good, do what felt good. And that led me to a place of pain. That led me to a places of regret. That led me to places of brokenness. That led me to places of insecurity. That led me to wanting to be seen in a certain way in the world's eyes, not understanding that God had set me up and created me for such a purpose, and that if I got what I wanted in that moment, I would have never been able to steward it the way that I'm able to steward it today. I now understand that the reason why God does things that the way that he does is because he has a divine plan. And a lot of us, because we are so committed to our plan and we are so committed to our version of how things should go, we don't allow God's plan to happen. Because listen, we can opt in and out of the will of God based upon our choices and decisions that we make every single day. There might be a person that's listening to this that's in a relationship that you know ain't the one for you. You know it. You talking yourself into staying into the relationship every other week. But because you don't feel like you can do better and you don't see God giving you better and you haven't experienced better, although you know this ain't it, you know that at some level, this is not God's best for you, you stay. You try to make it work. But God is calling you out. And you can't stay at peace with this thing even if you wanted to. Because that was your choice. That was the person you decided to be with. That's not who God had for you. And what I've learned in this time, and I hope that I communicate this well on this particular podcast, that God's plans for your life are not inferior to yours. They are superior. So whatever he has for you is greater than. You wanted that, and that was cool. And you try to make that work, and you try to make it work for a season and more seasons, and you try to make it fit for one season and more seasons. And God is like, listen, you can keep trying to make squares to fit into circles or circles to fit into squares, but they don't fit, and they weren't supposed to. Because that wasn't where I wanted you to be. That isn't where I've designed for you to fit. And what happens with us, family, is that because we haven't seen it and because there hasn't been a course that has been charted out before us to say, okay, Sam, this is what you're going to do. This is who you're going to marry. This is what's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And this is the plan. We're just going through life and we just figuring it out as we go along. And because a lot of this entire faith walk is things that we cannot see, forces at work that we do not know. What's crazy to me is that people don't believe in God, but they believe in the law of attraction. They believe in energetic movements. They believe that there's obviously law of attraction is if I'm speaking things into existence, there's an energy that I'm putting out. And we can believe in energy and vibes, but we don't believe in spirit. For me, it befuddles me, but that's besides the point. Here's my point is this. There is a force at work here. Two forces, good and evil. And a lot of us, because the enemy has done a really great job of making what looks free to be the preference, what looks like success to be the preference, what looks like certain things like That looks like where we should be. That seems like the way it should go. That's when the checks should come. That's when the job should happen. That's when the marriage should occur. We think that things should happen the way that we think they should go, but we forget that God's plans are greater than our own. And because we struggle with surrendering, like I've struggled with surrendering my whole life. I've struggled. I have struggled with surrendering my whole life. Surrendering my plan and allowing God's plan to happen the way he desires it. And there are times like I had last week where I have to sit down and I have to surrender and say, God, I know your plan is greater. And I had to confess in that service, like, God, you know what? I really felt like whatever I had intended or whatever I had in mind, I thought that was better than what you had. That made more sense to me. That's bigger for me, but I don't see it happening. I don't see it moving. I don't see what I thought you put on my spirit, but what just came to me in form, the opportunity that just presented to me is not everything I wanted, but it's pretty close to what I want. So maybe this is what you want. And like I'm going back and forth. I'm fighting between two different things. And God's like, my purpose will prevail. You're trying to make it make sense to you. You're trying to be in control, and that's why you're struggling. The reason why you don't have any peace is because you have yet to surrender it, Sam. Yes, you say surrender, but you're still wrestling with it every day. It's not about you. Do you trust me? Do you trust that the plans that I have for you are greater than the plans that you have for you? The answer in that moment was my behavior is showing no. But I know deep down inside that what God has for me is greater. But it was just me battling me, having a certain vision for my life. And because things aren't going according to plan, I'm struggling. And so my pastor left me with this, and I'm going to leave you with this. Because like I said, tonight, I'm not going to keep y'all long. I'm not going to keep y'all long. He said to write your plans down in pencil. That we have the age that we want to get married, the age that we want to have a child, the age that we want to make our first million, our first 2 million, whatever that may be for us. I don't know what goals you have for yourself. And all that is fine. And having goals is not wrong. But we have to understand that when we surrender or we try to surrender our walk to God, that we also have to surrender the course. That it may not look the way you thought it would. It may not happen as fast as you wanted it to. Like I look back on my life and I see the different parts where I wanted what I have now, I wanted then. I thank God did not give it to me then. Because if he did, I would have sabotaged what I'm doing now. I thank God, because I would have got lost in the world. I would have got lost in a lot of the areas that a lot of young women get lost in when they get hot on social media. You get lost. You get lost in this world. I'm glad that he didn't let me get lost in it. And there was a time where I was praying for it, and I thank God he didn't give it to me then. He gave it to me at a time where I wasn't praying for it. I was doing what I felt like he wanted me to do in a season that I didn't want to do it. I thank God that he did it when he did it. Because at that time, I was a place to surrender. I was willing to listen. And I was able to handle the responsibility that the blessing came with. Much better than I would have been when I wanted it. I want you guys to trust the course and understand that even where I sit today, I'm in a place I never thought I'd be. I've lived a life I never thought I'd live. I've seen things I never thought I'd see. And I have opportunities that I never thought or ever could have imagined for myself. A little brown girl from New Jersey. Who would have thought? Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Family, I want you to know that yes, it's okay to have plans, but allow God's purpose to prevail. That whatever God has for your life is greater than anything you could have planned for it. Anything you could choose for it right now, God has greater. That if you're thinking about the spouse, God has greater. If you think about the job, God has greater. If you think about the purpose, God has greater. Don't try to force your will, because your will may not be what's best. I'm telling y'all over and over again in my life, I can tell you story after story where I thought what I wanted, what was best, what I was praying for, I thought was best, and it wasn't. And I made plans and they were bad plans, terrible plans. I look back on it and I'm like, thank God, God didn't give me what I wanted in that season. I made a lot of plans, but now that I'm older, right now, as I said, I understand that it's a complete surrender. It's like, listen, God, you know what? I would love for this to happen, but if it doesn't, God, I know your plan is greater. I know your purpose is greater. Just make me want it like you want me to want it. Just make me desire the things that you want me to desire. Give me that, Father God. That's what I pray for that. I pray that if when the next man that I marry, I pray that God, I desire him. I have an unquenchable desire for him. That the attraction is uncanny. It's like, why do you feel this way about this person? I pray for that because I want to want his will. I do not want what I want. I want what he wants for me. I mean that. Why? Why do I mean that? Because I've been hurt and broken by my own choices. I've had freedom and I've broken my own heart and I've gone my own way. And I'm telling you now, from where I sit, the seat I sit in, I've made a lot of plans. I've wanted a lot of things. I've prayed for many things to occur. And I thank God today, as I'm on this podcast, that he did not give me what I wanted when I wanted it. I thank God that in the season that I was able to steward it well, he gave it to me. God is a good God. He's a responsible one. And he does know what's best. He really does. He knows what's best. Thank you for spending your time with us on Love Samantha Lee, the More Than Just Pretty podcast. It's been a privilege to share this space with you where we celebrate being unapologetically ourselves. I hope today's episode has encouraged you to embrace your own unique beauty and beauty in others. Don't forget to follow us and join our community on social media. Share your journey and your insights, and let's continue this conversation. Until next time, remember, real beauty starts with you being true to yourself. I love you, family, and I will talk to you soon.